Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call to order the November 5th, 2014 meeting of the Frederick County Planning Commission. Would you join us in a moment of silence, please? Thank you. There are no changes to the agenda.
Madam Chair, move for adoption.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Time for committee reports. Let's see, I think I've got a couple, 2 or 3. Mr. Triplett, Conservation Easement Authority meet?
No, I was unable to attend.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Transportation Committee, Mr. Oates?
Yes, ma'am, we did meet and reviewed our portion for the comprehensive plan on transportation. Really, there were no changes, part because we've lost funding, so a lot of the projects stayed put. So that was about the most of the meeting.
Mr. Unger, Sanitation Authority?
Yes, ma'am, we did meet. Total customer base as of to date is 14,195 for the water. Sanitary is 13,710. Current rainfall for last month was just over a half inch, 0.61. Previous month was 3.28. Still having a good average for the year, though. We're running about 3.10. Water production for the Deal plant, we pulled out about 2.6 million gallon a day. The Anderson plant, we pulled just around 2 million gallon a day. We purchased about 1 million gallon a day from the city, and our daily average is 5.67, which is very normal for this time of year. The elevation in Deal plant did go down a few feet. It's now at 657. It was at 662, but they're pumping that a lot harder now. They got a pump fixed in that plant that wasn't operating properly, and so we've got that working now. The Anderson plant, we're pumping, it went down, it actually come up a foot, which is real good. Parker's Mill plant is running very good now. Hydrogen is good. CBOD is better than last month. Nitrogen's still a little high. It's at 4.32, and I think we're supposed to be below 3, so they're working on getting that better. And they have really fixed the water leaks in the county now. We're running around 3%, which is excellent. We was running around 17% there at one time, so they've really done a lot of work on the water lines. They got audited last month, and the audit went very well, and the auditor sat there and told us about everything that they did, and he was very pleased with their operation. Planning on doing some test wells down at Lake Frederick in the near future. They didn't give a date on that, but they've got some sites down there that the geologists have said could be a good place to find some water. And they've put out a proposal for Marson Lake to stake a sewer line or possibly do a sewer line from the school on 522 up at where, Paper Mill Road runs out down to the plant at Parker's Mill, and seeing about running the sewer down there. So we're going to see how much trouble that is to get a sewer line down there. So hopefully that'll work out for them. And that's all we talked about.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. We have Mark Lowry from the
Winchester City.
Loring.
Loring.
Mark Loring from the Winchester City Planning Commission.
Thank you. I'll just report out a few items from our regular meeting in October, which is held on Tuesday the 21st. We had 3 actions and 4 administrative actions. Conditional use permit for VFW Post to operate a private club, 2 zoning ordinance amendments, 1 affecting side and rear setbacks in the CM1 district, and 1 affecting non-conforming uses and vested rights across the city. The 2 administrative approvals I'll highlight. 1 is for the Chopstick Cafe. They have a major revision going on. And then they approved the site plan for the lofts at Jubal Square. Thank you.
Thanks for being with us. Mr. Hess from the Board of Supervisors.
Yes. Since the last Planning Commission meeting on October 1st, the board held 1 regular meeting, and that was on October the 8th. And at that meeting, there were 2 items related to Planning Commission business. One was the Governor's Hill proffer amendment, and the board concurred with the Planning Commission's recommendation and approved that amendment. The other item was an information item that the Planning Commission had also considered, and that was the warehouse site in the Stonewall Industrial Park. And the board took note of the fact that there was no certainty that the funding for Route 37 would be available at any time, and it was unreasonable to have the property owner take that into consideration at this point. And other than the joint work session we had this past Monday, that was the only meeting since the last Planning Commission meeting.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I don't see any more reports from us. That's about right. So therefore, we'll open the citizen comment portion. On the agenda, this is where you get to speak with us regarding anything that's on your mind, with the exception of the public hearings that are scheduled. So if there's anything that you'd like to speak with us about, we invite you to do that. Seeing no one, we'll close the citizen comment portions. We need to, did we adopt the minutes?
Not yet.
Okay. We need to adopt the October 1st minutes.
Madam Chair, I move for adoption.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Our first item is a public hearing item. It's the rezoning 0414 Baker and Lepley properties submitted by Louis and Melissa Baker, Fred and Alice Baker, and Krista Lepley to rezone 8.59 acres from the MH1, which is the Mobile Home Community District, and RA Rural Area District to the Rural Area District. The properties are identified by property identification numbers 28-A-75, 28-A-76, and 28-A-82. They are in the Back Creek Magisterial District. Mrs. Perkins.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the commission. As you stated, this is a request for a downzoning for 3 parcels that total about 8.5 acres that are currently split zoned MH1 Mobile Home Community and RA Rural Areas District. And the proposal is to downzone them all to the RA District. The properties are located on Sinking Springs Lane in Gore. If I can direct you to the screen on your left. You have here the properties. The purple is the MH1. The parcels in their entirety are outlined in black. As you can see, Sinking Springs Lane runs along the side, and at the top of the screen, you can see Northwestern Pike and Gore Road. The land use proposed in this application is consistent with the comprehensive plan and promotes the county's rural areas. It's a positive rezoning application as it removes areas of mobile home community that would not be typically used for a mobile home park due to its location outside of the sewer water service area and the urban development area. So with that, we are seeking a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors on this proposed rezoning application. I would be glad to answer any questions, and the property owners are here tonight if you have any questions for them.
Thank you. Questions for Mrs. Perkins? Seeing none. Would the property owners like to address us in any way or just answer some questions? Whichever is your pleasure. We don't bite. Okay. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to speak to us regarding this rezoning? Anyone? All right, we'll close the public hearing as well. This item is in the Back Creek District, and it looks like we've taken care of if there were any problems outstanding, so.
Madam Chair, if there's no other questions, I'd like to recommend approval of rezoning 04-14 Baker and LaPlay property. And I'd like to thank them for doing that. I thought that was very nice.
Second.
Any other comments? Mr. Moan, would you like to start?
Moan, yes.
Dunlap, yes.
Triplett, yes.
Kenny, yes.
Molden, yes.
Thomas, yes.
Oates, yes.
Crockett, yes.
Manuel, yes.
Ambrosi, yes.
Marston, yes.
Unger, yes.
And the chair votes us, yes. This will go to the Board of Supervisors on November the 12th. Our next item is also a public hearing. It's conditional use permit number 03-14 for Caroline E. Watson for in-home child care. The property is located at 215 Westmoreland Drive in Stevens City. It's identified with property identification number 75E-3-165 in the Opequon Magisterial District. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Planning Commission. This property is currently zoned RP, residential performance, and its land use is residential. The adjoining properties are also zoned RP, residential performance, and their land uses are residential. Licensed daycare facility, 8-home daycare facility, is a permitted use as a cottage occupation with an approved conditional use permit. This licensed daycare facility has been in operation in this principal structure for 14 years. The applicant was not aware that a conditional use permit was needed for this in-home daycare facility. If I could turn your attention to the map on your left, the property is outlined there on Westmoreland Drive in black. Like I said, it's a resident. The Planning Commission, should the Planning Commission feel this use to be appropriate, staff would suggest the following conditions be placed on this conditional use permit. That number one, that all review agency comments and requirements should be complied with at all times. And number two, the hours of operations shall be permitted from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. Number three, the applicant shall satisfy the license requirements of the Virginia Department of Social Services and the County of Frederick. Number four, there should be no business sign associated with this conditional use permit on the property. Number five, other than those children residing in the property, there shall be no more than 12 children being cared for at any given time. Number six, other than those persons residing on the property, there shall be no more than one employee working at the daycare at any time. And number seven, any expansion or change of use of this conditional use permit or change of use will require a new conditional use permit. Madam Chair, Ms. Caroline Watson's here. She is the property owner and is the applicant for this conditional use permit. She'll be able, and I'll of course be able to answer any questions that you may have on this conditional use permit for an in-care child facility.
Any questions of Mr.? No, thank you. Mrs. Watson, would you like to address us, or would you just simply like to answer questions?
I can answer any questions you have.
Okay. Would you come forward then? Give us your name and magisterial district, please.
Caroline E. Watson. And what was the other question?
Your magisterial district? I
It's
can
the-
tell you, it's the Opequon.
Yes, the Opequon District.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ms. Watson, do you understand the conditions that are in the permit? Does condition number 2 cause you problems, the 7 a.m. to 5 p.m.? Is there any problem with children being picked up by 5, or would that be more workable if it was 6 to 6 or 7 to 6?
No, I'm typically 7 to 5. Occasionally, I've had some 5:30s, but very rare. It's in my contract, my handbook, and with state, I'm 7 to 5.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Any comments?
Madam Chair, I move that we recommend approval of conditional use permit 03-14 for Carolyn E. Watson.
Second.
Oh, excuse me. There is a public hearing for this item. Does anyone want to speak to us regarding it? Seeing no one, will close the public hearing. Now, do we have to make a motion all over again?
Yes, ma'am. I move that we recommend approval of conditional use permit 03-14 for Carolyn E. Watson.
Second.
Unger, yes.
Marston, yes.
Ambrosi, yes.
Crockett, yes.
Oates, yes.
Thomas, yes.
Holden, yes. Kenny, yes.
Triplett, yes.
Dunlap, yes.
Moon, yes.
And the chair votes yes. Ms. Watson, this goes to the Board of Supervisors on December the 10th. Alrighty, our next item is also a public hearing item. It's rezoning 02-14 Heritage Commons LLC, submitted by Lawson and Silik PSLC to rezone 98.28 acres from BS Business General District to R4 Residential Plan Community District, and 54 acres from RP Residential Performance District to R4 Residential Plan Community District. 31 acres from the RA Rural Areas District to R4 Residential Plan Community District with proffers. Properties are located west of the intersection of Front Royal Pike Route 522 and Airport Road Route 645 and are identified by the property identification number 63-A-150, 64-A10, and 64A-12 in the Shawnee Magisterial District. Mrs. Perkins.
Again, thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the commission. This is a rezoning application for about 150 acres of land that is split zone B2, RP, and RA to the R4, which is the Residential Plan Community District. This rezoning application contains proffers and modifications that go along with the R4 zoning request. Now, you may remember this is the same property that was rezoned back in 2005, which was formerly called the Russell 150 property, and it's also the same application that was discussed by the Planning Commission and the board at the September 3rd staff briefing. Now, this is a location map for the property. As you can see, the property is outlined in black. You have the existing commercial area that is shown in orange, the existing residential area is shown in yellow, and then there's the small triangle that is the RA piece that is along 81. Now, as I stated, this is an application to use the R4 Residential Plan Community District with modifications and proffers to construct a development with about 1,200 residential units, as well as commercial and industrial land uses. 1,200 residential units will include 1,050 multifamily units and 150 townhouses. Now, just a little background, the R4 district, it is a mixed-use district that it allows an applicant to modify or tailor the ordinance to help further meet the needs of the community that they're envisioning. That's why the modifications are allowed to be requested. Now, submitted with the application, there was a market and fiscal impact analysis. There's a proffer, as I stated, for the 1,200 residential units. There's a maximum proffer of 1.2 million square feet of commercial and industrial uses. There's a proffered land use table matrix, a GDP that illustrates the land base, as well as a modification document which contains 12 zoning ordinance modification requests. This is a generalized development plan that was included in the agenda. It shows the 7 land bays, as well as the proposed road network. Now, within the modification document, some of the key points of what it's requesting, one of the requests is 100% for townhouse and multifamily, whereas the R4 limits the development to 40%. They were requesting an increase in the residential density, whereas the R4 is typically 4 units an acre. They're proposing a little more than 12 units an acre in the residential areas. They are requesting an increase in the commercial maximum, whereas the R4 is 50%. They are requesting a decrease in the open space from 30% to 15%. They are requesting private streets instead of public streets, commercial building heights up to 80 feet, an increase in the floor to area from 1 to 2, as well as inclusion of a modified apartment building dimensional layout. Now, overall, the land uses shown within the Heritage Commons application are not consistent with the 2030 Comprehensive Plan. Additionally, the application does not adequately address the negative impacts associated with this request, in particular, the negative transportation and fiscal impacts. Many of the reviewing agency concerns and comments remain unaddressed, specifically VDOT, Frederick County Public Schools, Parks and Recreation, the county attorney, as well as Public Works. The proposed R4 zoning, as I stated, it does enable a mixed-use development. It could be more of a town center type use. However, as proffered, this application would allow for clearly separate uses, whereas the residential and the commercial could be clearly segregated from each other. As far as the fiscal impacts, the negative fiscal impacts associated with the residential uses proposed on the property have not been satisfactorily addressed. The market and fiscal impact analysis shows a positive fiscal gain. However, it does require full build-out to achieve this, which could be upwards of 15 years. The proper phasing falls grossly short of achieving what their model is utilizing to achieve the positive fiscal gain. And further, it doesn't proffer the multifamily units to be market rate, as shown in the analysis. And also, the analysis does not reflect the Commissioner of Revenue nor the Treasurer's comments regarding inaccurate data that was used. The county's development impact model projects a negative impact of $13,062 per single-family attached or townhouse unit and $11,339 per multifamily unit on county capital facilities. Based on the unit cap in the proffers, the potential negative impact of the residential units will have on the county facilities of $13.9 million. Now, I would note that the development should not be utilizing the future tax contributions of the commercial land base to offset the negative impacts of the residential units without guaranteed phasing of the commercial uses to be built in conjunction with the residential uses. Now, within the proffers, the applicant has included a phasing proffer, and what they are proposing is that they would receive a building permit for 50,000 square feet of commercial with the first 300 units. They would then secure an occupancy permit for that 50,000 prior to starting the 600th unit. They'd then receive a building permit for an additional 50,000 square feet of commercial with the first at the 600th multifamily unit. However, there is no trigger for the occupancy permit for the 50,000th, for the second 50,000 square feet. So what the proffer would allow is the construction of 599 multifamily residential units and 184 townhouses with the construction of 50,000 square feet of commercial area. And with the development impact model projections, that's over 1 million annual negative impact. Now, this is not consistent with the analysis that was provided by the applicant to maintain economic balance, nor does it a guarantee to offset the impacts from the residential units. Because within the analysis, it proposed 3 5-year phasing proffers and associated with the 1,200 units and the entire build-out of the over 700,000 square feet of commercial area. Now, moving on to comprehensive plan conformance. The land uses shown within Land Base 3 and 7 are not supported by the 2030 comprehensive plan. Land Base 3 is shown with mixed residential and commercial land uses. The comprehensive plan designates this area entirely for employment land uses. Land Base 7 is shown with the ability to develop with 100% commercial or industrial uses. The comprehensive plan shows this area within Land Base 7 as solely high-density residential. So therefore, introducing the commercial and industrial uses into Land Base 7 is not supported by the 2030 plan. So with that, I'm going to turn the transportation concerns over to Mr. Bishop.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. I'll begin. I know you've already seen this graphic, but I've received questions that have indicated some confusion on this point. It's no secret that we have revenue sharing dollars on this project, and we are doing work. However, relative to this design, our efforts and our expenditures have been up here and not down here. Some people I've spoken with have been under the impression that this part is our design. Now, to be clear, I don't have a particular problem with that corridor layout. I know I've had comments on the entrances themselves before, but as far as the alignment of the corridor and the 4-lane section and all that sort of thing, I'm fine with. But I didn't want people having the impression that we're actively doing or have actively done any design work on this on this portion that I've inside the big circle here. So just to clarify that. And just to further clarify, this is the actual drawing, which I apologize is a little faint, but from our project meeting with our consultant Pannoni yesterday that we went through, you have the bridge here. This is the roundabout, which you should remember from the last graphic. And then this is what most of us call the northern Y, up through the Glaze property to 522 North, with the residual of the Russell property is all down there. So forgive my artwork. With that, I'll go into some of the key points that we have, and I know there are other things floating around. I have to address what's in your packet, so if there's confusion by that, I apologize. I can take any questions you may have to try and resolve those issues. But there is $1 million in cash proffers that is currently on the property that would not be on the property under this scenario. I do have Chapter 527 concerns. We're talking about roughly 1,000 additional units and nearly 500,000 square feet of additional office, commercial, and industrial under the 1.2 million square foot. Depending on how that 1.2 million gets split, It'd be very easy to exceed what was previously studied under the TIA. And I know we're not trying to make this about the Russell 150 rezoning, but that's the TIA we have on that property. And the reason it's important is if we're in conflict with Chapter 527, and there's a neighbor or anybody who doesn't like this rezoning, and they decide they want to come and challenge it, it puts us in a difficult position because it'll mean that we've gone against state code. The Warrior Drive commitment remains shaky. I do feel like the language has improved from the first version to the second version. However, to me, trying to read it like a pessimist, it looks to me as if it would be fairly easy to avoid if one wanted to avoid it. The construction commitments are completely reliant on a revenue sharing agreement between the county and the applicant that does not yet exist. We have sent drafts back and forth. We hope we can come to an agreement shortly because that will remove a lot of confusion, but that agreement does not exist. Road section details are very helpful that have been added as far as the cross-section. That's been a good cooperative effort. And also the entrance language. You may recall from the September 3rd meeting in particular, I had issue with all the entrances that are shown on the GDP. However, I feel like the language that the applicant has agreed to, basically noting that they still have to go through all the regular approvals and that sort of thing, has me fairly well satisfied as far as those entrances go. Yes, ma'am.
Would you share with us the importance of the Chapter 527?
Well, Chapter 527 is the state code which requires the study of development that is going to increase trips on state roads. Now, we had a previous application here that has a certain amount of traffic approved on it, about roughly 24,000 trips. The scenario in this proffer is 1,200 units, 1.2 million square foot of commercial, industrial, or office, depending on how that mix comes out. Let's say you develop all the 1,200 units of residential. Well, if all of a sudden you're only going to do commercial, you can't do more than a little under 300,000 square feet before you break that traffic cap. So that's my concern regarding Chapter 527, because if you knowingly accept something that should have been studied, you put yourself contrary to Chapter 527. So that's the situation. I'll note that VDOT is also here. If you have questions for them, Candace has some conclusions, and then you can ask questions of either one of us.
Really just wrapping up, as I stated earlier, the application as it stands now is not in conformance with the 2030 Comprehensive Plan, as discussed by myself and Mr. Bishop. We would be happy to answer any questions that you may have. I would note that the applicant is here and they do have a presentation that they would like to give, so we could either answer questions at this time or later, whichever the preference of the commission. Thank you.
Any questions? Yes.
I have just a few. John? Yes, sir. In regards to the entrance language in the proffers?
Yes.
Which was approved, it would also be appropriate to have that GDP revised and get all those entrances off there, because it kind of implies they're being approved.
I think with the language, the point is fairly moot. It's probably cleaner if it's that way. I don't disagree with you. But I know that's VDOT's preference based on their comments that they sent along. But I do think the language that's been added probably resolves that issue.
Thank you. And then I have just one or two for Candace.
Yes, sir.
The way the proffers are written now, the closest multifamily out there is Preston Place across the way. There's nothing in the proffers, is there, that prohibits us from getting 1,050 units of low-income apartments the way they're currently written?
Correct.
So that's what we could be faced with.
Correct. The proffers in your package do not proffer market rate units.
Thank you.
Any more questions of Mrs. Perkins or Mr. Bishop? Thank you very much. The applicant? Mr. Lawson?
Thank you very much. Madam Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, for the record, I'm Ty Lawson here on behalf of the property owner and also the contract purchaser, developer. We do have a presentation, and also I'll tell you, I have Mr. Patz with me, who did the economic analysis, who will talk briefly and respond more to questions if you all have them. Also pleased to have Mr. Cathcart with us, who will talk about the apartments that are proposed and certainly answer questions far better than we could. And of course, Matt Milstead and Bruce Griffin are also here. This aerial, this is our property. This is the former Russell 150. We have filed under Heritage Commons, and actually it's a rezoning that we filed back in September of 2013. I'm sure you all remember. It's been around, if you will. We had to deal with some tax issues, and those have been sorted out. I'm glad staff pointed out that we did have the joint work session. We've had numerous meetings with staff and many of you all and members of the board, certainly along the way. But it is a mixed-use development that we're proposing. But this is where we are right now. This is the Russell 150. This rezoning is intended to replace in its entirety what was approved back in '05, and of course that was a rezoning with proffers. You all have seen the slides that show the existing zoning and what's allowed. Of course, it also had a road alignment, which is not the current road alignment that's been approved by VDOT under the new, there's 2 revenue sharing programs in place. Mr. Bishop pointed out the one that apparently the county and state are actively funding and working on, but of course there is another one that runs from the traffic circle down to Airport Road and through the spinoff shows the beginning of Warrior Drive. Those are the new layouts, and I'll get to that under our generalized development plan. Of course, under the original Russell 150, there was CDA funding. We all know that failed. And it also provided for more old-style segregated zoning where the B2 and the residential did not overlap. They touched, but they were most definitely segregated out. Of course, that development, I know there's references to it in the staff report, but cannot emphasize that it's dead, it's bankrupt, and failed in every sense of the meaning of the word. This is what we're looking at right now. That's a picture from 522. To your right is Airport Road and the traffic light. And this is what we're left with, and this is what we're working on. There's been alluded to, and I know you all know that you have the revised proffers that were circulated a week ago Monday to each one of you all via email. And I do appreciate the restraint of staff and their commenting on the proffers that were there before. But just briefly, I want to point out, because the red line version that we gave you on the 27th, there really aren't that many changes, but I think they're significant. One is because there was a fear or suggestion that maybe the multifamily would not be market rate as we had proffered and said we would do, and as our market analysis says we're going to do. So we actually put in the word market rate in front of every reference to multifamily throughout the document. There was also a request that we drop the industrial, and we deleted that. The other change that was suggested was that we need to somehow get around the 527 issue. And so the way to deal with that, thought it was creative. We met with staff, cap our trips from this development at 23,177 and put in a mechanism that says if we do get to that number, how we address it with subsequent traffic studies. And frankly, you need to know. We went through all kinds of scenarios of how much office, how much retail, and the different numbers per the manual, and so we think it's much simpler just to cap it at the 23,177. That, of course, is from '05. That is from the approved traffic study that the Russell 150 folks did and submitted when that was approved. That eliminates any complaint or issue about traffic study. And then the other question was, there was a concern that the wording that we had put in before about the guarantee of mix, guarantee of commercial along with the multi. And so we're always happy to receive input. We wrote it a little differently, and what we've tied it to is certificates of occupancy. So when we, in order to get a certain number of certificates of occupancy for multifamily, we have to have a certificate of occupancy for a certain square footage of commercial. And we thought that was the best way to put the stops in, or the guarantees, to make sure that there was a mix. Those are the only changes that are in the proffers that were delivered to you a week ago Monday. Not sure they're entirely necessary for additional review and recommendation, but to the extent there are any questions, that's how we chose to respond to them, and I think it takes care of it. This, of course, is our generalized development plan. This is a document and a drawing and an alignment of roads that we received from Pannoni and Associates. Pannoni and Associates, upper right-hand corner, is the contractor that is working actively for the state and the county to design and build a road network pursuant to 2 revenue-sharing programs between the county and the state, which includes a bridge over 81 to connect to Tevis. It has a 2-lane traffic circle that then connects the roads that you see there, the Northern Y, as Mr. Bishop referred to it, Warrior Drive, and then the road, which is our main boulevard, which then comes in and aligns with Airport Road on 522. The design of this, and we've added in our proffers cross sections and so on, those things are coming from Pannoni and Associates, working again for the state and the county. Prior comments had suggested that maybe we should get an engineering drawing of these things. That became a little problematic because there is only one engineering firm working for the state and the county. And so again, we're getting these shots and these slides from the county engineer and the state engineer. We've proffered to dedicate the road alignment that's necessary, and we've also proffered to backstop the county for its share under these revenue sharing programs. I want to go through just some slides of the stated staff comments. First is about the mixed-use development, and there's a concern that we've lost our mixed-use urban center concept, no assurances of what development will materialize. And we've never used the word urban center. I know that language has been used before in other ordinances and so on. The language we're using is mix. We're proffering a mix. We've got in our tables a mix, and we are guaranteeing a mix within certain ranges and caps within the property as a whole. And you'll note under the generalized development plan, there's certain areas that are mixed use, others that are purely B2. The blue is purely a commercial zone. But within the other land base, we're intentionally providing for, and I appreciate staff's comments about R4, provides for flexibility within these various land bays. And again, if you look at what we've submitted as a whole, we want to rezone the whole and within the total project have a mix of uses, and within those areas that are set aside as mixed use, have mixed use, have areas where you can live in a multifamily or a townhouse and walk across the property to a commercial use and/or a working opportunity. And we've also provided for the opportunity to put those all in one building as well, or the flexibility for that. But that's as far as we can go. That's what we believe will happen, and that's what we'll commit to, that within the totality of the property, there'll be a mix. But as far as an urban or a stacked situation, we are not able to commit to that at this time. R4 zoning, the comment is that the zoning sought would enable a mixed use. However, there are no assurances. Again, need to look at the property as a whole, and with the tables that we have, we believe we satisfy the ordinance and that we will have the mix of commercial and residential in a very desirable mix. We have capped the residential to 1,200. There is no cap on the commercial, other than those safeties that are put in for traffic and so on. But we believe that those are very desirable to the county because, of course, they're revenue generating. There's concern about comprehensive plan conformity, and in particular, proffered uses in certain land bays. Frankly, again, what we are showing you, and can't say it enough, is that this project needs to be considered as a whole. It's the entirety of the old Russell 150, 150-plus acres under Heritage Commons that we are asking to be rezoned and to have the flexibility to move the uses around. And we would suggest that that is in conformance with the comp plan. It is interesting, under your comp plan, the area that is shown for high-density residential with our cap on 1,200 units, we're actually coming in a little lower than what the comp plan would call for. Comp plan would be up to 16 units an acre. We're at 14.2. But certainly the uses, the townhouse and multifamily that we're proffering is on all fours with the comprehensive plan. The other areas that are shown on the comp plan that show for employment or commercial, again, we're providing that as part of this community. Go into details about the comp plan. Of course, we all know it's a guide. It's to give some of the components or elements that ought to be found in the area, and we've highlighted a few of them. Intensive forms of residential development, certainly we have that. Commercial, certainly we have that. Higher density residentials, we are providing that. Major employment, we're providing that. We don't see this area as a big box area. We see it more as an office, service, commercial, restaurants, things that would fit in well with the multifamily, market rate multifamily projects that Mr. Cathcart will talk about further. This, of course, is our area in between, sandwiched in between I-81 and 522, and certainly with the revenue sharing programs that are in place, quite a significant transportation running through the property with the two roads tying in with the circle and then going across 81 and connecting to the Tevis. This is the comp plan, and again, if you can't see it, what it's showing is employment, a mix of employment and high-density residential. Would submit that's what we're delivering, and so we are in conformance with the comp plan. Revenue sharing agreement, there's some questions about that. No guarantees if the revenue sharing fails. We're putting it in the proffer. The way these things typically work is there is an agreement between the property owner and the county or city or town, whoever's entered into the agreement with VDOT, and it's a backstop agreement, and it's signed by usually a single asset LLC. What we're doing is we're proposing, and we put it in our proffer, that we're going to pay the county's share. It is a condition. It runs with the land if this proffer is approved. And we submit that's got more teeth in it. And as far as guarantees, if we don't enter into it, if we're not successful, then this development fails. So we think we've gone above and beyond, and certainly what you would see in the norm of just signing a contract and putting it into our proffers. Warrior Drive, there's comments about it and suggestions that there needs to be more of an accommodation for it. We have proffered to dedicate a right-of-way at such time as it's ready to be dedicated and it's designed. You'll note in our generalized development plan, it stubs out, it stops, that the revenue sharing only goes to that point, and it's that distance that's required to get from the traffic circle to be able to take an entrance or an exit off of that. You can't just drive straight onto the traffic circle. We're proffering this at this point in time. There's been suggestions that there may be I guess this would be the third revenue sharing agreement for Warrior Drive. We'll certainly want to and agree to participate in that, but all need to understand that the road improvements that you're looking at and that we're committing to backstop are significant, millions and millions of dollars, just even at half. And this is what we can commit to. There is no revenue sharing agreement in place for Warrior. The last thing I'll comment on it is Warrior is a road that stops at the Grove property right now. There is no connection to Warrior or any other road at this point in time. In our proffers, we do put in other triggers, such as if that property develops, we'll connect it. But we have a hard time seeing how it's beneficial to build a road to undeveloped property and non-access property at this point in time. The fiscal gain, the economic analysis, Mr. Patz is here. He'll talk about the details, but the comments are that there are no guarantees to offset impacts, and then there needs to be commercial development in conjunction with residential. I'll let Mr. Patz go to this further, but if you look at his study, and even using the income levels that he's put in, all of the components are tax positive. Now, certainly it gets more tax positive as you add commercial, but because of the demographics in the market rate multifamily, and because of the townhomes that are being proposed, they're all tax positive. And so as far as guarantees to offset impacts, well, if we're tax positive, we don't have negative impacts. Again, I'll direct you to the proffers that were given to you a week ago Monday with the guarantees and the triggers of the certificate of occupancy of delivering in 50,000 square foot increments commercial property, which makes it even more positive. There's a discussion about phasing, lack of proffered phasing. We do have phasing. We think this is about a 15-year project. We really don't know. But again, we've got a cap on residential. There seems to be a concern on those, so we've done that. We do not have a cap on commercial. We're not sure why one would want to have a limit or a phase or a cap on the commercial, because again, that's all tax positive. And so again, I think the way we've read and written the proffers, it makes sense, and it makes good fiscal sense. It's interesting, staff had a comment about that our impact analysis figures are based on only average income. That was kind of a frustration for us as well. There's in the analysis a 40,000 range occupant of the multifamily, and Mr. Patz will explain this better. What he's saying is that's our average income in the county, household income. What he's also saying is that they can afford, at that level, you can afford these market rate apartments. If you read the report, though, it also says this is a minimum. And what's anticipated, and Mr. Cathcart will talk more in detail about this, is that you're going to have above average household incomes living in these apartments, and they're going to generate even more and more positive income and make it even more tax positive to the county. Again, I'll let those gentlemen talk more about that. The TIA, I think we took care of that by capping our trips at the 23,177. We were a little confused by the comments about a TIA, especially when we're talking about a road network that's being designed by the county and state. But I think we sorted that out, and putting a cap on it takes care of that issue. The PPEA, there's still lingering questions about that. Staff says the need for this proffer is unclear. County has not entered into commitments for a county administration building. We understand, we agree. The bottom line, though, is that offer is still out there. We put a fuse on it of a year, and if the county wants to move forward and do that, then we'll honor it. If they don't, it's in the area that's zoned for B2. I can tell you that we do have other folks that are interested in locating on 522 and at the intersection. You can probably think of who those folks would be, or those types of folks. And so it'll go to good use, good B2 use, but we think it's the right thing to do to honor the proposal that we put out there and leave it there in the event, for a short period of time, in the event the county wants to act on it. Modification comments, just touched on them quickly. We took out the light industrial, that's gone. About the open space, I think that's very correct. The open space for the specific properties has been narrowed, but there is a significant amount of open space with the stream valley that's being put in, the walking trails along it, and certainly the amenities that you'll hear about. Mr. Cathcart will talk about those on the properties themselves. And then there was a comment about the height issue. Of course, one of the reviewing agencies is the airport. We're not in the flight path. Certainly will abide by any FAA regulations, and don't really see that as a significant issue. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Patz very quickly, and then Mr. Cathcart will get up and talk about his communities, his existing communities, and what to expect here in Frederick County.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Stuart Patz. I did the market and fiscal impact analysis. I think you have a copy of that impact analysis. The copy that you have now has been reviewed by the Commissioner of Revenue for the county and has been deemed to be successful and accurate. There was one small error that she would like us to change, but we will do that in time. When we do our fiscal impact analysis, we also include a market study. The market study is to show that there is market support for what we're proposing in the fiscal impact analysis. And I think we tried to be very clear on that. And using a 15-year development period was not what the sponsor asked for. It was what our conclusions were in terms of what market support would be or how long it might take for all the land uses proposed. We did show a phased development, not based on proffers, but based on market trends, to show that the fiscal impact analysis could be positive, would be positive in 5-year increments. In case someone said to us, how do we know all of these developments, all of these land uses, all of the building plan will be built within a 15-year period? So we took our own judgment to say, look what can happen each 15-year for each 5-year period, and the numbers came out to be positive. The conclusions of our fiscal impact analysis is at build-out, the county will benefit, have revenue benefits, net benefits of $3.2 million a year. Now, that is based on the way we do our fiscal impact analysis. It includes on-site revenues and expenses and off-site revenues and expenses. That difference from the county's DIM model, and let me explain, please. The on-site revenue is the actual revenue from your real estate taxes and what is actually built on-site. Off-site revenue refers to expenditure potentials from on-site residents and businesses in the community that help support your retail space, retail development, retail sales, and office space and other uses. And then there is a multiplier that is set by the Department of Commerce for each county in the country that shows what that multiplier effect is. So within the report, we fully spell out why we have these on-site and off-site expenditures and what they are. We showed in the report that the minimum household income required to support the rents at the market rate upscale apartment units that are being built would be $40,000. That would only be for a one-bedroom unit. The 2- and 3-bedroom units would require higher income people. The townhouses would require higher income people at a minimum of $75,000 income. So the report uses, based on BLS data, $65,000 as the average income on site for the expenditure potential. And so I will say that that type of fiscal impact analysis is what we use all over the country. 4 of those studies were submitted within the last year to the city of Winchester. All were accepted and all were approved as presented. The report that we have presented to you is now approved by your Commissioner of Revenue. But I would...
We will let,
She did give us one error that we didn't correct, but she did note, thank you very much, that she forgot to tell us about that. So we will make that correction. But I think we are in the right ballpark with our numbers. But I would like to say a couple things about the staff report that shows what the difference is with our numbers and what has been presented to you tonight. Number one is we do use on-site and off-site expenditures and revenues, which differs from what the county staff has. We did our research and determined that apartment units at the income range that we're proposing and the upscale that we're proposing has a smaller pupil per generation rate than what was used by the county staff. And so that was based on research. I think Mr. Cathcart, when he presents tonight, will tell you that that's the experience in his property. We also want to make the case that when we're asked to do a market study, our market study is based on market trends, not on proffers. So we show the sponsor what the market is. The sponsor and his counsel can take that and put together a proffer program, which has been done, which actually is based on the market study that we've presented here. So I don't want to go through every critique or point that is brought out. I do want to emphasize to you that this project is unique for the area. It is more upscale than anything in the area. It will generate a very positive net impact no matter how you calculate the numbers. And if I could, Madam Chair, just make one other comment. We did use the fact that the county office administration building would be on the site. We did that with the understanding that that public investment is a key anchor for the ability for this property to generate $3.2 million annually in net revenue at build-out. So while we took a leap there based on what we know today, we want to emphasize the importance of that both to the county and to the proposed development. I think that's my presentation right now, but I think I'm available for questions at the end. So thank you very much.
At this point, I'll introduce Mr. Cathcart and let him speak. I don't want to steal his thunder, but he may have gotten some awards in Charlottesville for delivering very, very nice projects. And what we've got is a video that we can play. I don't know how you want to do it. Do you want me to run the video, or do you want to?
I thought you were going to do the video first. And
then Okay.
Is that what you're? Yeah.
Just hit it. Now what do I do? Arrow? Thank you.
This is Mr. Cathcart's project in Charlottesville.
Right.
Which is the model for what we come here to Heritage Commons.
That's okay. No music. That's okay.
People are coming.
I mean, what it depicts, of course, is a freestanding apartment community. It's not stacked, it's not multi-floored with commercial, but it's a freestanding community, and this is a community that he has in Charlottesville, and it's done very, very well. We don't have it here in Winchester or in Frederick County, but we believe strongly that it will do well here. Go ahead.
Walk through it, Rick. It's important. Good evening. I'm Rip Cathcart, founder and majority owner of the Cathcart Group. We're a luxury apartment and more recently assisted living developer based out of Charlottesville. Matt and Bruce asked me to get up and say a few words regarding who we are, what we do, and our vision for the Heritage Commons property. Our primary focus is luxury apartments. We develop them, we build them, we own them, we manage them, soup to nuts. And real quick, a little bit about me. I started out, I guess, at the bottom in this business. I started out as a realtor in Charlottesville back in 1982. Throughout the 80s, I was a realtor and bought some rental properties. And early 90s, I made the quantum leap into luxury apartment development when I developed the first phase of the Lakeside Apartments in Charlottesville. That's this community right here. And that was the first phase, 148 units, and it built out. We ended up at 348. Our company has developed and currently owns 946 apartment units in Charlottesville in 3 different communities. These 3 communities. We're also building what we envision for the Heritage Commons site would be something very similar to the Reserve at Belvedere, which is this project here and the one that you're seeing up there in the video. And we're also building that same design down in Harrisonburg now. So we've got it's called the Reserve at Stoneport in Harrisonburg. We're building also assisted living down there, and we're about 3/4 finished with the first 168 units of what will be a 392 unit. It's master plan, so we like to do big communities, but master plan them and build them in phases. Obviously, we're not going to bite off 300 or 400 units at once. We do them in phases. It lowers our risk and lowers everyone's risk. Our outlook is to build the finest residential rental communities in the markets that we operate in. And I will say that our approach is a relentless pursuit of excellence. Our vision for the residential community we will build at Heritage Commons will be a high-end residential community, like I say, very much, very similar to the Reserve at Belvedere. And these communities, as you've kind of gathered at this point after seeing the video, are fully amenitized with a large clubhouse for community gatherings. It's a benefit of living there that you can rent the clubhouse and throw a party. So at a nominal rate of $100 or so, much less than someone would pay for space at a hotel or a country club or whatever. We've had wedding receptions, we've had
rehearsal dinners, big gatherings of that type in our clubhouses. They're that large and that well appointed. Our communities also include a large resort-style saltwater pool with waterfall, a large, not just a few pieces of exercise equipment, but a large fitness center where you could get the kind of workout you would get at a health club. So our residents can work out right where they live and not have to join a health club. We have a movie theater that can be reserved, and my family, I actually take my family and do that sometimes at one of our communities because it's got surround sound, 18 seats, and the residents, there's no charge for it. They just reserve it and go in there and watch a movie. Big events like the Super Bowl, we have to do a lottery because everyone wants it then. But of course, walking trails and an outdoor sport court, hot tub are also part of the amenity package. The units themselves, spacious, anywhere from 800 to 1,600 square feet. Approximately 30% will have direct access garages, so that's a trend that we're seeing. So my approach since I got in this business has always been to try to bring to the high-end rental product something that hasn't traditionally been available in the high-end rental product. So we've got fireplaces, 9-foot ceilings, oversized soaking tubs, stainless steel appliances, granite countertops, kitchen islands and breakfast bars, oversized walk-in closets, oversized soaking tubs, full-size washer and dryer, and abundant storage. And I have some handouts here. There's a lot more commissioners here in Frederick County than there are in Albemarle County, so I don't know if I have enough, but I'll pass these out for those who are interested. A little bit about us and some of the awards we've won.
Sir, if you'll just give them to the gentleman down there, they can.
What's that?
If you'll just give them to the gentleman down there, they can pass them along.
That way we can move along.
Start right there.
Two stacks here. One is our company brochure, and this is just and I'm going to brag a little bit about a recent award we won. I could talk all evening about how great our communities are, but you'd probably be more impressed with what others have had to say. And we're extremely proud of the fact that, and that's what this placard is about. Our local newspaper, the Daily Progress, has what they call Reader's Choice Awards, and in different categories like movie theaters and restaurants and bars and apartment communities. And one of the categories is the favorite apartment community. And we've got about, in Charlottesville, there's probably 9 or 10 of these type of communities, 3 of which we developed and owned, and we swept the top 3. So the Reserve at Belvedere this year, this just came out about a month ago. This is 20,000 readers responding. The Reserve at Belvedere got number 1, Lakeside got number 2, and Carrollville got number 3. So very proud of the fact that we swept those awards. I guess the other thing, I'm trying to keep my remarks brief here, but one thing I want to emphasize is that we're in this business for the long haul, and I think that's important. It's important to us, and hopefully it's important to you. Our outlook is to never sell these projects, and I think this is important because it comes out in everything we do, from how we design them, how we build them, how we maintain them, and how we manage them. And I guess I wish the picture of Lakeside was more of the buildings and not of the lake and here, because that's our oldest property, and it is 20 years old now, and we're very, I think if you came down and toured it, and I invite anyone to do that who has an interest in doing that, I would give you a personal tour of all 3 of our communities, but you'd be impressed with how it looks 20 years later, and that is because of our long-term approach. For example, we've remodeled the clubhouse 3 times now, so we very much believe in plowing profits back into the asset, and I think that benefits everyone. I guess I'll make one last point as you consider the merits of this rezoning application. Let me just say that I truly believe that the Winchester community, the town of Winchester, the county of Frederick will benefit from the kind of community that we build. I've been successful, and that's great. I prefer success over failure, but sometimes I ask myself, what am I contributing? And I really, what I'm proud of is I think that we offer not just a housing option with fully amenitized rental units, but a lifestyle that's in the communities that we've built in, and there's 3 other than if we built here, this will be our 4th, that we brought not just a housing option, but a lifestyle that was not currently available in that community. 2 quick things I'll mention. Is that although we are high-end, we are affordable to the median income earner. So it's not just for a bunch of rich folks. It's, it'll be accessible and affordable to a broad cross-section of the community. And just to echo what Stu Patz was talking about in terms of we're absolutely convinced, and it's pretty much been proven, that our communities are cash flow positive to the municipality. And there's 3 reasons for that. One is that because we're high end, I'm sure our assessment's going to be based on our gross revenue. So it's going to be a high assessment that's going to generate a lot of taxes. The second reason is because of the higher income demographic we target, we have very few school-age children living in our communities. The income demographic we target, pretty much by the time they're having children, they're living in a single-family home. So, and the other thing is because we're, like I say, we're a higher income demographic. The police are not out at our community every weekend. So I'll point that out. So versus a low to mod community that creates much less tax revenue and has school-age children and possibly more police involvement, we have a lot of tax revenue and very, very little burden on the services. So that concludes my remarks, unless anyone has any questions for me.
We're going to wait and do questions at the end, sir. We're going to wait and do questions at the end.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks a lot. I think, well, how do I get to the last one, Candace?
Should we move this?
I realize there's a lot here. It's a big project. A lot of moving parts, a lot of flexibility within the R4 zone. But I think that's intentional, and I think that's what the ordinance was designed for. And I think if you look at our tables, it gives flexibility, but it also gives max and minimums that will assure a mix. This is a picture. We took some folks on a tour of some other communities, and we like this one because although it's flipped a little bit, there's an office building on one side and retail on the other. As you go into it, we believe that this is the look you're going to have, if your back is to Airport Road and you're looking into the new Heritage Commons community going towards the city. We appreciate Mr. Cathcart's enthusiasm and explanation of his real projects. It's not a concept. He's got an intent to build here, and that's why he's here. Appreciate Mr. Patz's comments and ask you to look hard at his report. Understand his enthusiasm about government investment and things like that. But drill down. Everything is tax positive on its own, without a county building, without other components, and so on. I think that's very important, and as we point out, we'll honor the PPA for that year. If it doesn't happen, that's okay. The property's zone B2, and we'll move on. But at the end, what we're asking for is your comments and recommendations on the project as a whole. Again, this has been pending since September of 13. If you want to go back to its beginnings, it's been pending since 05. We'd ask that you recognize the key components, the roads, significant transportation improvements, roads, bridge, the multifamily residential that we don't have, but we're proffering to bring, significant commercial and the revenue that comes with this, and we're asking that this be forwarded to the Board of Supervisors, I believe, at their December 10 meeting. And thanks for your patience, most of all. Again, I understand it was a long presentation, but again, it's a big project. Thank you all.
Do any of the commissioners have any questions for the persons who have presented to us at this point? Anyone? Don't see it. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak to us regarding this rezoning? And if so, if you'll come forward and give us your magisterial district and name, and let us have your thoughts.
Good evening. My name is Alan Morrison. I'm from the Gainsborough District. Listening with close attention to the three presentations that were made afterwards, and also to what the planning department made. For the first time in my life, after listening to these three presentations, I had a strong urge for a cigarette. Mr. Lawson started out by saying they're using a lot of imagination in their proposals, and I appreciate people using imagination. But my concerns are, how close does imagination come to reality? This is not Charlottesville. We do not have a major university with research, college professors, and all of that type of people who are the ones that are most likely filling these developments. So what can Winchester-Frederick County support? Higher density means more people. Even though these people that have money don't have children, I'm supposing our population will drop over the next 50 years. But that means more demand on schools, more demand on roads, and the real revenue income to the county is not going to come until later in the process. So the county taxpayer will be held to the initial outlays for services, schools, and transportation. We depend heavily on our planning department for guidance in these situations, and we should rely on most of what they say. I'm not always in agreement with them in many things they do tell us, but these are the people that we have hired to be the experts, and we should not ignore them. The developer is asking for less clear definition of use of property to allow them a greater flexibility. So if you give people greater flexibility and less definition, you are less likely to be locked in to the end result you expected when you go into it. The office building keeps coming back, an office building we really don't need and probably aren't going to need for another 30 or more years, is a major keystone to the proposal. Though they have a tax positive impact even without the office building, but that is, again, at completion and not at the ramp up. We are dealing with the best intentions of the developer, but what will this be as a result as we go through the process if we do not clearly define the expectations that we're looking for? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to address us regarding this rezoning? Anyone at all? Yes.
Ellen Murphy, Commissioner of Revenue for Frederick County. I've been quoted a couple times tonight, things that I don't remember saying, but basically, when I was first brought into this and introduced to this project, there was a booklet with a number of mathematical errors that affected the type of revenue that I am familiar with. Because of that, I felt it was not fair for the whole presentation to be brought before the Planning Commission, the Board of Supervisors, people like that, with these blatant errors regarding revenue and that kind of thing that I am familiar with. So I contacted them. I explained that I had concerns. They did make most of the adjustments in their presentation. My doing that did not mean that I was endorsing or in any way encouraging you to do anything than what your own judgment tells you to do. There is still, as the last horn blew with this just in a few days ago, there was still a slight difference in the revenue projection with a quote of 58 cents on an office building business license, for instance, and that only applies to professionals. In the presentation, they admit that medical office buildings are probably going to be out near the hospital, so this would apply to just professional offices other than medical that they would have in there, and not to the general office stream that is a different rate. I'm kind of a fanatic about everything being right. Those of you that have dealt with me in my office kind of know that. I see a couple smiles out there. I am not disapproving it. I'm not in a position where I have that to do. I just got involved because there were certain things that were blatant errors, and we did get those corrected. Other than that, it's strictly your decision, and I don't want my name attached as someone supporting or denying it. I'm not here to do either of those. Any questions? Thank you. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to address us? Yes, sir.
Clarence Davis Jr., pastor of Calvary Church of the Brethren, which borders the Russell 150. Our congregation has been there for over 50 years now. And one of the problems that we have with persons coming to our congregation and leaving our congregation, the road and our entrances onto 522 are very dangerous. And one of the things that we were so excited about was the possibility of having the transportation made easier. The traveling through Route 50, the interchange between 522 and Route 50 is very, very dangerous. There are a lot of accidents there, and we have many senior citizens that do travel that. And the crossroads from Tevis that would come across and come onto Airport Road and then come across to 522 would assist our people greatly. The other factor is that property has been neglected now for many years, and I don't mean to inject humor in any manner, but by the way, I would love to see it cleaned up to get rid of the skunks and snakes from my parsonage, because I live beside the property. But the property is undeveloped, it has grown up, it's a mess, and we would be, quite frankly, anxious to see something done that could clarify that property and make it more presentable to the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to us regarding this rezoning? Anyone at all? Well, then we will close the public hearing. Staff, do you have any thoughts?
I just want to clarify a couple points in response. It's a nitpick, but currently there are 3 revenue sharing awards that apply to the various roads over there. And I would also note that we reiterated, even at the September 3rd work session, that we'd love to do another revenue sharing project on Warrior Drive. That's not a maybe. We're willing to do that. As far as how revenue sharing works, I feel like I need to say a couple things. Our revenue sharing projects are not state projects. The state, of course, is involved. We apply for funds. We're still subject to their approvals and all the process that goes along with being in a revenue sharing project. But it's got state money on it. We have to meet state approvals and all that sort of thing. But it's not a state project in the sense that, for example, 277 is supposed to be a state project or 310 is a state project. There was a comment made regarding some consternation over talking about traffic study when the county and the state are working on the road design over there. It's not the fact that a road's being built that creates the need for a TIA. It's an intensification of use and trips that come onto the state road system. There have been a lot of references to backstop. they're offering to be a backstop to the county in this situation. I've felt for some time that the county is acting as a backstop to what has taken place on this property, because we started applying for these revenue sharing funds before the current development team even became involved. Frankly, even before MMA took ownership back of the property. As we have tried, that's why we have 3 different revenue sharing awards on the project, as we have tried to place whomever may end up with the property in a position to be successful by only having to pay for half the roads instead of 100% as the proffers call for. So I take a little bit of an issue with the backstop to the county language, because we feel like we've stepped up to be a backstop to whoever ends up trying to develop the parcel. Maybe that's semantics, but I think we, the county, take a certain amount of pride in what we've tried to accomplish here. Regarding the lack of an agreement and what that means, it's true. If the rezoning gets approved and subsequently things, go to heck in a handbasket and no agreement gets agreed to between the applicant and the county regarding revenue sharing and reimbursement of the matching dollars, that they don't get to develop. That's true. But it's also true that that has the potential of meaning that millions of dollars go back to the state that we want spent in this region, or county taxpayers potentially get tagged to fill in that gap. That's a board decision, of course, but those are other potential scenarios that I, as a staff member, have to worry about. So if things fall apart, it doesn't necessarily mean everybody just goes home and it's okay. There's other potential impacts and issues that I worry about. So I just wanted to clarify those couple items.
Thank you. Any other comments that staff would like to make? Ty, excuse me. You okay?
Just to clarify, obviously, transportation is a big part of this project. And it almost suggests that there's some fault and who's backstopping whom and all that. I think it's safe to say, and the county's included in this, that we're all newcomers to this property. The current owner of this property is involved with this property and bought it at a court-ordered sale after the CDA failed and after the original developer failed and went bankrupt. We do appreciate what the county has done to try to get revenue sharing and to try to jumpstart this project and get it going. The property owner, everyone needs to know and understand, current property owner is the one that bought the bonds, the CDA bonds, and lost that money, the money that they put in. And right now that's right around $5.7 million, and it's growing quarterly at an interest rate. We do understand how the revenue sharing agreements work, and frankly, we think it's probably the only way that this will go forward, and so that's why we're agreeing to participate with it and so on. So we understand and we appreciate that very much, but we're not the original owners. We're the ones that have picked it up as of late and are trying to take it forward and turn a very negative thing, that very first picture, into a positive thing, the last picture. And do submit that the proffers have submitted do accomplish that. And that, in and of itself, is, I asked you to look at all the components, but that's a big component. That's a big part of this proposal. And again, we look forward to you all giving comments and recommending and moving this thing forward, because we do need to get to the board and see if we can finish, if we can complete what Mr. Bishop and the county has done and put together in these revenue sharing agreements, working with other property owners in the city, and it's cobbled together. But we're anxious to try to go forward, because one thing he did say, and it is very true, one of the funds has some age on it. And the way it's been explained to us is that if we do not go forward with it, if we do not spend the money, then we lose that. When I say we, I think of us as a partnership. The county and the property owner lose the state matching monies. So it's very important, and excuse me, it's been impressed on us that we need to move forward with this. So we thank you for your time and patience and look forward to your recommendations.
Thank you. Thank you. I would like to just mention one thing, and it's not insignificant. And while we all have seen a new set of proffers, those proffers are not the items that we're considering with the application in this book. And there's a reason for that. I think that there are probably some excellent ideas within the proffers, but those are not the ones that we have to deal with. So that we need to make our recommendation based on what we have.
Well, Madam Chair, I'll start out. From the macro standpoint, I think this project would be a very good project for Frederick County. I think it has the potential to be a very nice development, very livable development, a nice walking development, and would be an asset to that area of the county and would be an asset to the whole Winchester, Frederick County community. I know the developments down in Charlottesville. I've seen them. I'm a little concerned that a little bit different to average income in Charlottesville than there is here in Winchester, Frederick County, but it still should be doable here. I also am sympathetic that when you put together a package this large, several hundred sheets of information, there's going to be inconsistencies, especially when that package is put together by 3 or 4 different parties, not at the same location. But there are significant inconsistencies in the proffers, in what Mr. Platts has said, what other folks have said. Just as an indication, if you look at the proffers, it talks about groupings of 400 residential units, 300 residential units, and it appears to me from the proffers that we could end up with 1,200 residential units in the first 6 years with only 100,000 square feet of commercial property. That is not going to be a positive revenue stream to Frederick County, especially if you're looking at a 15-year build-out. I don't know how the 6-year, 1,200 residential units and a 15-year build-out really goes together. But, those are details that can all be worked out. Madam Chairman talked about proffers. We have 3 sets of proffers in the package that was provided to us, and then there was a 4th set sent out. It's difficult to be able to put the whole thing together in a couple hours or even a couple days looking at it when we're not exactly sure what's going to change tomorrow. There's a lot of omissions. There's a lot of inconsistencies. Again, when you get down to the devil's in the details, macro, I think this looks good, sounds good, but I don't see the black and white commitment to make sure what we get in the micro is what we're talking about in the macro overall detail. I really hope this goes forward. I hope the project is built. I hope it's built like people are talking and not like what is written, because I don't think what is written in the proffers and what's been shown to the Planning Commission is totally consistent with the macro of what's being presented. Having said that, as our chairman said, we have to act on what was provided to us in the first 3 sets of proffers, which really doesn't, meet the mail right now. But I'll conclude my comments and let other people talk.
Anyone else? Anyone else down here?
I have a question for John Bishop, please.
Yes, sir.
So am I to understand that the last TI was 2005?
I believe it was officially November of 4, but yeah, you're in the ballpark.
So we're talking about something that was 7 years before the 527.
That's correct.
Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Can you expand on the county or the applicant's liabilities or problems or concerns that they should have with that?
My key concern with Chapter 527, and I know we've got proffers we can talk about and proffers we can't talk about, and that makes it a little more interesting. But the key thing with Chapter 527 is in the proffers that are in your packet, the 1.2 million square foot of commercial office or industrial and the 1,200 residential units. Depending on how that 1.2 million gets mixed amongst office, commercial, and residential, would not just significantly exceed what was previously studied for the property, would blow it out of the water. I mean, we'd be in a whole new realm of scenarios. And that's not been studied. Chapter 527 requires that you do traffic studies for that reason. They don't want localities to just willy-nilly, without at least looking at those things, approve developments before they study them. And Chapter 527 is still fairly recent, but it's also fairly firm on that point. So the concern for the county and frankly for the applicant too, were if someone to be opposed to the rezoning and it was approved with proffers that way, and then they wanted to contest it, they could contest it due to the fact that we approved something that was not compliant with Chapter 527. I know we're talking about different proffer packages. I have to say that the trip generation cap gets us there. I feel comfortable with that, even though that's not what's in your part that you can consider tonight. But that's why Chapter 527 is important. We can't ignore it and approve something, because then if we get challenged, we're completely exposed.
Okay. Thank you. Now I have a question for Candace, please. Has anybody revisited water and sewer since 2004, 2005?
There was a comment in your agenda from 2013 from FCSA really stating that they do have adequate water and sewer available in terms of the plants to serve the property. However, they did meet and we did check with them, and while there's adequate capacity to send and receive water and sewer, they're unsure about the lines, the infrastructure that's in the ground, and whether or not it's adequate to serve the property, and what's going to have to be upgraded and installed is in question, and who's going to pay for that.
Yeah, that could involve lift stations, pumps.
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you. That's all I have for now.
Thank you. Any other comments? Thoughts?
I'm good.
Well, this is our time for action, I think. And this is Shawnee, so the gentleman.
Well, I have a lot of problems with the commercial absorption rate. I just don't have any confidence in those figures. We still have Cross Point out there that's been there for 20 years, no absorption. We still have, the Corps of Engineers in Costco was built in 1993. That was 21 years ago. So talking about absorption, there's still 200 acres in that area that hasn't been absorbed that's commercial. So it's just something that gives me a lot of concern. 527 concerns me. I don't think the impacts have been mitigated. And I'm concerned that review agency concerns have not been addressed. And I just have a lot of doubts that this is ready to go forward. So I'd like to move for denial of rezoning.
Second.
0214.
Thank you. There's been a motion to recommend denial, and your yes vote would support that motion. Your no vote would not. Any other comments? Mr. Unger?
Unger, yes.
Marston, yes.
Ambrogi, yes.
Maynard, yes.
Crockett, yes.
Oates, yes.
Thomas, yes.
Bolden, yes.
Kenny, yes.
Triplet, yes.
Dunlap, yes.
Bone, yes.
And the chair votes yes. This will go to the Board of Supervisors on the 10th of December. May I ask, I didn't do it while we were considering the item, but we did have a communication from a Mr. John Kelly, and could we get a motion to accept that for the record?
So moved.
Second.
Second? Okey-doke. All in favor?
Aye.
One other thought that we need to deal with is that we do not have an agenda for November the 19th, and so we will need to cancel that meeting.
Move we cancel it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. I think we're at the end of our time.
Move for adjournment.
I gotta get there and see that property. I was going on the other side.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I thought that's where Ross Common.
You are watching the Frederick County Government Information Channel.